the planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet
Earth.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet stupid.
Linda Weymouth, welcome to the Mark Thompson Show again. How are you?
Hi, I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. We've got the climate tipping point. We've got water issues. We've got, and some good things in the mix as well that you have for us today.
Yeah. We always have to have some good stuff, Kim. It can't all be doom and gloom.
No.
Even though it's a little bit crazy out there right now. And that New York Times story was really a big deal. And I was very actually happy to see that it got, top billing in my feed, because it's like we need to be talking about the stuff and people need to be aware of it.
Absolutely. So what's your priority today?
Well, I think that this New York Times story about the planet's climate tipping points and where we're sort of reaching them, I think it's really important. And I know it's a hard one for people because they've got other concerns. They're concerned about the economy. They're concerned about how much things cost. One of the big things that people are concerned about right now is immigration. But I'm going to get to that in a little bit, because one of the things that I'm really thinking about is just how, everything is so interconnected. And we have to remember that. And we have to remember that this spinning ball is our home, and we're completely reliant on, every system and all the biodiversity. I mean, the amount that, we've talked about this before, that the planet, the resources of the planet contribute to our well-being and to the GDP of, every country. It's really huge. So the thing about the tipping points, and this is a thing that I think is really important when you think about, coral reefs, and they're super, super endangered because of how hot the oceans are. And what they're saying is if we, can pull back on how much the amount of greenhouse gases we're putting into the atmosphere, we might only lose 70 to 90% of the coral reefs. But if we don't do anything and we, keep on as, business as usual, we could lose, they're estimating 99% or up. So that's basically all. So the thing about tipping points is, think of a dial. With a dial, it's very nuanced. You turn it up, you turn it down. But a tipping point isn't like a dial going up and down. It's more like a switch. And when you flip that switch on, it's very hard to flip it off. And this is why it's so important that we really, take greenhouse gas emissions down. They're supposed to be down 64%. By 2035, 2050, we're really supposed to be reducing, but the problem is we aren't. And so what this article in the Times was talking about was things like coral reefs and where they're at, the melting of the permafrost, the big, we've talked about before, the circulation in the oceans, the Atlantic meridional circulating current, AMOC, which is hugely important because that brings the warm water from the west coast of Africa over to the eastern seaboard, and then up from the US east coast up to Greenland. But the problem is as the Greenland ice sheets melt, they're putting all this fresh water, into the ocean, and that could really upset, this really important circulation current that, moves nutrients and oxygen and all these important things, around the world. So I suppose that what really concerns me is that we're not on the right path yet. We're not reducing our emissions as fast as we can. And it was interesting because Australia has been in the news. There's good news with Australia and there's some bad news. Well, one of the things about Australia is they produce a huge amount of the Earth's greenhouse gases because, okay, they're only 0.33% they only represent 0.33% of the world's entire population. It's only 26 million people who live on that great big, desert continent island. But the problem is they have huge fossil fuel, reserves, and they're not slowing down. In fact, they're going even faster. And what's crazy is, they have this new Labour government, and everyone thought, well, the Labour government is really going to, get the environmental policies, under control and heading in the right direction. Well, they're not. And I tweeted the story this morning, and my thing is like, did they take a playbook out of the GOP's, a page out of the GOP's playbook, drill, baby, drill? Because right now they are putting 4.5% of the global emissions up into the atmosphere every year. 0.33% of, representing the population, but 4.5% of the emissions globally. They're second only to Russia. And there's a great graph in the Guardian story that I sent, maybe Tony or Albert could put it up, and it shows, where Russia is, where Australia is. And Australia is huge with coal, and then we come in, the US comes in at third because of all the oil and natural gas that we're exporting. But like big exporters, we Australia, the US, and Russia, we export so much of these fossil fuels to other countries. So the greenhouse gases happen, the emissions happen elsewhere where they're
Sure.
used.
Yeah.
So, actually in Australia, yeah, not so much. But what they really need to be doing, like if they could, they're exporting to, highly developed countries, to Japan, Taiwan, South Korea. And what really needs to be happening, and other all big exporting, fossil fuel exporting nations need to be doing this, is talking to the countries that they export to and saying, hey, what about we get into partnership on renewables? Because, I'm sort of beating the drum every week. We have to be going in the opposite direction, not in this just, increasing. I mean, they say that within the next decade, Australia is set to double their exports, and they will gobble up 9% of the remaining carbon budget. They talk about how much carbon we can still burn. Well, that's almost 10% of the remaining carbon budget, and they're going to blow through that by 2035 if they keep on exporting these huge amounts of coal, and and they're doing the same thing that's happening here. I've talked about what's happening along the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, so this just puts it in perspective, and you can see red is coal, and Indonesia huge with coal, huge. And this is we know it. We have to be going in another direction. And a big thing that I thought was also really interesting in Australia, and this is also, I'm using sort of Australia as an example, but it's really indicative of what's happening in the rest of the world. Because when Australians have been polled over since 2022, the priorities in what they're concerned about are shifting. So even the Greens actually in Australia, so back in 2022, it was 90% of them were saying, we're really concerned about climate change. And now it's down to 70% of them are concerned about that. And one of the things that is growing as a concern, and we're seeing this in Britain with these horrible riots that have been happening with the, white supremacists, anti-immigration, we see it here with the talk of, we're going to deport, millions of people. It's just, if we get in, they're gone. And Australia is one of the three big countries for immigration are the US, Canada, and Australia. And Australians are really concerned about the number of migrants that are coming into the country. Well, here's the thing, Kim, some migrants are escaping oppressive regimes, but a lot of them, in fact, I would say, most of them are moving to other countries or are on the move trying to get to other countries because of economic reasons. Well, what is one of the huge things that's driving economic downturn right now, particularly for farmers? It's climate change. There are droughts, there are wildfires, there are all these things. I mean, they talk about, Guatemala, hundreds of thousands of Guatemalans moving north because they can't farm anymore. And so if the developed, richer countries don't help these people, at home where they live, of course they're going to be on the move. And this migration, and this is what I was talking about before, about how interconnected everything is. Mm-hmm. This is there's sort of, you keep on making the conditions worse, and then the thing you most fear is coming true. But if you took care of those conditions more, the thing that you're most, fearful of that's coming, true, this invasion, as a lot of people see it, you need to go to the source, and we're just not being, I don't think, smart enough about it.
Seriously, Belinda, you expect people to plan ahead?
Well, no. I mean, that's not that's not who we are as a species. For most of our time on the planet, we were hunter-gatherers. We weren't, these sedentary, living in towns, driving cars. We have a very myopic short term. It's see the deer, kill the deer, eat the deer. Oh, there's the next deer. See, and so we have to overcome this. But I want to tell this positive story that's coming out of Australia. I don't just want to seem like especially as a Kiwi, I can't be seen as an Australia basher. So one of the stories that I was, I'm really interested in soils because soil is this huge resource, super important. It holds 3 times as much carbon as the atmosphere. It's second only to the ocean in how much carbon it can hold for us. So it's really important that we take care of it. And also because where does our food come from? It comes from the soil. So there are all these different startups that are trying to really utilize soil as as a resource and not utilize it as a resource, basically help it to be the resource, because we've depleted it so much. So there's an Australian startup, they're called Loam Bio. It's a great name. I'm only being a little bit sarcastic, but it is the loam. They're talking about the soil, the loam that's on top.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is they're taking microbes. Oh, so this guy, this is the farmer. I think his name is something like McDonald, or it's a great name for a farmer. He's down there looking at how the spores are doing. So what Loam Bio has done is they've got all this funding, and with 100,000 acres in Australia, they're getting farmers, when they're planting their crops, to add microbes. And there's so much, microbes everywhere now, our microbial, health, our,
sure,
gut
biomes,
yeah, it's very, current. But the biome is hugely important. And what they're doing is, so they're taking, so what are microbes? Where do they come from? Well, they come from fungus. So they're taking dry fungal spores, and when they plant their crops, they're adding this, this dry, powdery, dirt, basically, to the dirt. And what you can think of fungi as carbon traders. So what they do when they get down in the soil is the plant starts to grow, the crop that's been planted, the microbes latch on to the roots of the crop, and they absorb excess carbon that the plant is taking out of the atmosphere, and the fungi then transfers that into the soil, and it's deep enough that it can hold it there. And it's not just because what farmers have been doing is leaving the debris of a crop on top, so all that organic matter, so that carbon can go back down into the soil and regenerate the soil. But the thing with the fungi is it's a deeper store of carbon. And as I said before, soil has this incredible capacity. It could absorb 1/7 of our carbon emissions a year. 5 gigatons of carbon could be being absorbed by the soil. So it's a hugely important resource, and it's interesting because, of course, agriculture is a huge generator of greenhouse gases. But how can we grow better crops that are more sustainable and take care of the soil and really use it as the carbon sink that it can be? I mean, I just have to mention this because I really love it. When Pete Buttigieg was running for, was a potential presidential candidate, for the Democrats, he talked about soil and what an incredible resource it was as a carbon sink. And the fact that he was so literate about soil, I mean, I love him anyway, but that made me go, wow, this is, super cool, that he gets this, how important soil is. So there are lots of different companies that are looking at, how do we utilize soil save soil and then, you know, get it to help us. And it's a win-win for farmers. And, you know, realistically, you know, it buys us some time. Yeah, so you see the carbon being sucked through the leaves through photosynthesis, the CO2 getting into the soil. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so much going on under the soil. And this is the thing, we're very much, it's sort of like the ocean, out of sight, out of mind. We don't really think about, you know, what's happening in spaces that we can't see. But this is a thing that will help us, but we still have to be reducing, you know, emissions. That is super important.
I have a brother-in-law who is a soil scientist for the EPA. So
cool.
What you're talking about is like every family dinner. We talk about soil, talk about things like that. And it is really interesting how we could change things by using the environment around us as well.
Well, this is the thing. This is like, you know, the interconnectedness of all the systems, you know, you know, what's happening with, you know, migration and the push-pull of that, you know, what's happening in the systems that sustain life on Earth and us as a species, because, you know, we're pretty rapacious. You know, we have a big appetite for the planet's resources. And yeah, taking care of the soil is, you know, I love that you talk about that at family gatherings.
I know. We're a bunch of eco nerds over at my house, so that's just the way it is.
Yeah. And okay, so that's one positive story. And then another positive story, it was the one that you alerted me to, what has just happened with the, so Southern California's Imperial Water District, which is the biggest, thirstiest user of the Colorado River Basin's water. And the fact that it has, you know, made a deal with the federal government to conserve, to leave 700,000 acre feet of water, you know, in Lake Mead. I mean, that's really
that's
huge.
A pretty big deal. Yeah. I don't know how they're going to do it when it comes to, you know, California being likely going back into drought. We have good years and bad years. So how they're making this deal to leave all that water, it's great, but don't we need it?
No, here's the thing. It's all about agriculture. So what the federal government does in return for the water district saying we won't take that water out is they're funding conservation projects. And the conservation projects that they're funding are crops that use less water, and then conservation techniques that farmers need to put into play. Yeah, it's really wild when you see that big, when you see where the lake has been and where it's at now. I just never, when I drove through Lake Shasta, I sent you guys a little video of it a couple of years ago when we were driving north and just seeing Lake Shasta with the, you know, just, I mean, it's really, it's so intense. But the thing is, you know, we have to do this. We have to grow, you know, we can't, you know, in the Central Valley, we can't keep, and then the Imperial Valley, we can't, and Coachella Valley, which is part of the Imperial Water District, where they've got all those golf courses, which are just, you know, they're just water. I mean, that's just ridiculous to have golf courses in the desert. But we have to be right-sized with the crops that we grow. We can't grow, you know, cotton, it's too, you know, water dependent. I mean, I know there are all these almond trees in California, the amount of water that it takes for, you know, per almond, it's, you know, it's crazy. So it's that thing of, I'm going to say it again, making reality our friend, you know, what works and what, you know, being sensible, basically. We don't like that. I don't think we think that is sexy as a species to be sensible, but
no. Plan ahead, do things that make sense, you know, think ahead. Yeah. Why
do that? Well, you know, if you have kids, you have grandkids, you really want to be, you know, thinking about these things.
Absolutely. Belinda, you've brought us the serious, you've brought us the positive. We go off into the world feeling a little bit better about what's happening thanks to you.
Oh, well, that's, you know, that's my mission of my raison d'etre.
Thank you, Belinda Weymouth. It's The Planet Stupid.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Belinda. Bye.
Bye-bye.
More.
It's The Planet Stupid. No. It's The Planet Stupid.
Next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.